As a POC, I'm PO'd when I see the stereotypes acting like the fools we're supposed to be, since everyone knows a G, or someone who says they are, but that act was not for me. I had no issues being hard, and yet we're dumb for being smart, called a pussy or a fag, while some clowns still say retard like they're not the first ones to get mad if the child that they have is challenged in any way that makes an asshole laugh. Well, they'd step right up and say how you messed up their day, and now it's time for y'all to fight. Of course, we only push that play if the person in our sights isn't quite alright. Maybe smaller, weaker, thinner. Then we'll smite with all our might while we eat your fear for dinner. But if that dirty sinner has tattoos and grizzled muscles, we turn to Elsa in the winter, frozen in our piddle puddles. Either way, we're quick to tussle when someone calls us names. We're all pieces in a puzzle, stuck in someone else's frame. Yet it's not like we're ashamed or even notice how we're duped. We all just play the game in this never-ending loop.
But what I did, bro, what I did though, what I did though, what I did. But what I did, bro, what I did though, what I did. But what I did, bro, what I did bro, what I did. But what I did though, what I did.
How did we get this way? Ignorant sheep with our diplomas, always trying to get laid. It's like we're one big melanoma, but we're only in a coma because we're kept asleep. If a doctor writes you somas, then no wonder there's a steep climb to just compete with the world you see around you. And when your teacher drags their feet, if they're drowning, then you drown too. Our society full of clown shoes doesn't see it's one big circus. We're in the bathroom yelling, John who? Yet we don't see it's all on purpose, confirming that you're worthless while claiming it's your culture. Your uneducated wordless is half the reason that we falter. The wounds we need to cauterize will bleed the goyim dry. If we can't lead our horse to water, then surprise, the steed will die. There's a reason we don't thrive, well, unless it comes to failing. And since the cream will always rise, then the coffee can't prevail. Things are like a ship that's sailing in a perfect storm of stupid. The future we're unveiling proves we're too dumb to improve it.
But what I did, bro, what I did though, what I did though, what I did. But what I did, bro, what I did though, what I did. But what I did, bro, what I did bro, what I did. But what I did though, what I did.
I'm so embarrassed by my people and how we're raised to fall. There really is no equal to the damage that we call our culture as we ball our fists when we're made fun of. If our sons and daughters stall, then it's no wonder when we run up, we trip while screaming one love as we try to shoot the sheriff. Relying on our guns because we're tricked into being scared. If not for chosen tariffs on our dignity and lives, we wouldn't be so quick to perish, thinking when we finally die, we'll reach the heaven in the sky that we aren't allowed on earth. Our present presence is a lie, presenting presents that are worth much less than how at birth we're all given serial numbers. The chosen see us all as serfs, and their wave of terror plunders everyone that's under the thumb of their oppression. Our owners like us dumber, that way we beg for their aggression, foolishly calling it a lesson the God they give us gives to test. And while we know it's their invention, we're sheep enough to say we're blessed. Dumbasses.
But what I did, bro, what I did though, what I did though, what I did. But what I did, bro, what I did though, what I did. But what I did, bro, what I did bro, what I did. But what I did though, what I did.
People always ask me, what videos they should look up to find the information or get where I am. And after all these years, I can tell you there's only one thing you need to watch. YouTube, a video called Hollywoodism. It tells you everything you need to know, and it's not even by some crazy conspiracy guy like me. They make it about themselves. It's almost like they're bragging. You know, TBG style, baby. Woo!